All right, so before we kick off this episode of It's a Wrap, we have to do another RIP shout out, man. This time to
Mm.
Hayden Panettiere, right? So I'll keep my
Okay.
section short and sweet, right? I'll explain why in a bit, right? So literally this morning, at the time of us recording this, I woke up in the morning. Usually, what I do, I just put on Wi-Fi on my phone, right? And the first thing that I see is a notification of IG story that Chris Stuckman, who I follow on IG, put up, right, saying, so sorry to hear this RIP, right? I was like, what? And, like, like the work week has now started, folks. Who passed away in the magical world of Hollywood, right? And I just went on the story. Much to my surprise, I saw it was Hayden Panettiere, and I literally was on
Yeah.
my bed like, "What?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what's ironic and sad about it is that personally, I would not call myself a big Panettiere fan, right? Not saying that she was a terrible actress in any way, shape, or form, right? But it's just like if you were to, put me at gunpoint and tell me, name like, five best performances or five best characters she ever played, I wouldn't get through with at least two of them, right? But she was just always someone who was there, like you know the name, you know the films that she appeared in. There were others that I didn't even know she appeared in at all. I didn't know that she did, video game voice work and stuff like that. I didn't know these things, right? Because I was not a big fan, right? It's just that, like, I don't know, for whatever reason, I just attach myself to her as much as many other millennials did, right? Or I guess it's just that even though she was like big like when it comes to acting, right? Like in the 2000s, 2010s, she was big, right? But I just felt like in this decade, you wasn't really hearing much about her, even though she was doing things and living her life and dealing with situations, right? But I feel like for me, there was like she just needed that big, big, big performance, that big role where you'd be like, oh, okay, she still have it in her. She could still do great things, right? And it's unfortunate, right? Unless a big Hayden fan could tell me otherwise. Yeah, we haven't really gotten that, right? And I'm not talking about TV. I'm talking about like film in particular, like movies, right? I haven't really seen that, right? But that's not to say that she didn't star in some memorable films, right? Like I was reminded that she was in Scream 4. Which, slight spoiler, I will be doing a review of in tribute of Hayden, for this upcoming season of Six Reels Deep. She was also in Scream 6 as well, which I saw recently in preparation for Scream 7. Of course, everybody would know her from Heroes, which admittedly was
Right.
a show that I only watched the first few seasons because, like, when it was like on TV, like on cable, sorry, right? I didn't watch it religiously. It was only when it was on syndication, i.e., through G4. That was when, well, I should say, I started watching first season when it was out, and then I sort of like tuned out after the first season. And then when it was on syndication, I think it was on G4. That's when I checked it back, right? Something along that line. I don't remember the full details, but the point is, I didn't watch a full series of it, right? Like it was going good, but then it just sort of tapered out a little bit, and I just didn't care after a while, right? But I always remember her in it, and just I think to me this was like my official introduction to her, right? Because she just had that name and she just had that presence with her, right? And yeah, she was one of the more memorable characters in that show, right? Never saw Nashville, never bothered to watch Nashville, and I guess for me, just being a film nerd is because it was not inspired by the classic Robert Altman film with the same name. It was something totally different. But yeah, I didn't know that she was in a Bring It On sequel. I did not know that she was in Remember the Titans. I forgot that she was in that
Right.
actually, right? I forgot that she was in Dinosaur. That was the 2000 film, right, from Disney, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't know that she did a voice or voices, sorry, in Kingdom Hearts. I didn't know that. I didn't know she was in Until Dawn. I didn't know that, right? So there's a lot of things about her, like just creative wise, career wise, that I didn't know about, right? But as per usual, when it comes to these deaths, it sucks now because, like, boy, if only I knew. Or now I feel the need to watch the films that she appeared in, right? Even if they were like small roles or whatever it is, right? So now I feel the need to check out stuff like I Love You, Bette Cooper, or Alpha and Omega. Just stuff that I'm just reading up right now here on her wiki page, right? Last but not least, she actually appeared in a movie this year. It was a direct-to-video horror film called Sleepwalker, right? And she was also the executive producer for that, right? But because that show mostly got negative reviews. I don't think it'll be right for me to talk about that and dog the film, right? Because I mean, this was her last quote unquote film appearance, right? But yeah, this is a big deal, especially when it comes to us millennials, right? Because we just know the name and we know the films that she appeared in, right? But it's just a shame that she just didn't have that big role, right? That like would cement her as like one of the best actresses of our time, if you will, right? But I don't know, maybe if I just rewatch some of the films that she appeared in, maybe I will find that one role where it's like, yeah, boy, that's like the best thing that she ever did, like acting wise, right? But yeah, not much more I could say though. Yeah, so RIP to Hayden Panettiere. So with us in this episode, we have the great Tracy Hutchins, and we leave it up to him to close this in memoriam session here, right? But yeah, Ricardo, if you have a few words you want to share before we get to Tracy, yeah, take it away.
Yeah. This was genuinely shocking. Good. She was in a movie with real unfortunate. Just watching the clip. Ice Princess with Michelle Trachtenberg. You find that
Right.
shot with the
Yes.
two.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have that shot with the two of them, in the mirror. I was like, wow, dude, just to watch that now was like real sad. Yeah, this was real shocking, and she was, from what I understand, she had some issues. She had a lot of issues involving drug use, and I know she had postpartum. That was a whole thing. So for what I understand, it was an overdose that she couldn't recover from, or they couldn't sort out medically. Um, yes, I know she had a lot of issues because she had a basically like a tell-all book now. Kind of talking about she issues as I remember seeing an interview, but I thought she was recovering. I thought she thing, and then yeah, just to find the news is really sad, really, really unfortunate. Um, and yeah, she do she thing, and then well, it's just these young actresses die nowadays. The girl from the Godzilla franchise, I think she passed away recently.
Yeah, a few months ago, sorry, about a month ago. That would be
Yeah,
the Death Gill, right, from
Yeah, the very
yeah.
Godzilla vs
very young one.
Kong and
Yeah.
the sequel.
Yeah. So it's really unfortunate stuff to see these young people dying. But yeah, the cheerleader, that was her big break. She come from that. A lot of people came from Heroes. But yeah, it just when you see somebody that young just pass away, it's like, nah, boy, they just don't feel right. They don't feel right in the spirit, as the kids say. So yeah, it's that. I had not much to say or feel any awe about, but just I saw it just be sometimes real sad, just real sad. So yeah, that's about it. I say millennials might be in shambles right now because yeah, she did a lot of stuff
Yeah.
from since then. And just that young, sad, real sad.
So yeah, last but not least, Tracy, well, before, because I know that you didn't see Housey Dragon, so you would be chiming into our
No,
chat, right? But
no.
before you sort of tuned out for this at least for this part of our episode of this episode, sorry. Yeah, take it away. Your thoughts on the legacy that Hayden left behind.
I gotta tell you, my first thought when I got the news was we didn't save the cheerleader, and that really stung. It's one of those things where you hear about it and you're like, what is going on? Because Claire, that's the main character that I always go back to. So like Claire, Heroes. Her in Heroes was such a defining character, was such a defining period of time for that kind of character to be on screen, and it was just Eden played her brilliantly. And even though I didn't really dig up too much in terms of like Scream, I knew about Nashville because Nashville used to be floating around on these network television. So I'm there between Greys and all the other things. So I knew a little of Nashville, and I saw a report I think this morning where they were saying that they were writing new stories for her that was closer to her life. So that was going to be another fresh sort of opportunity. But it really just it brings to mind the fragility of existence and the fragility of life in general, in terms of what we do in here and what this life experience is about. But also, it just feels like of another part of your, as Master Medina would say, is another part of your millennial core is being eradicated off of the planet. And then the idea of her and Michelle Dawn, because Buffy,
Yeah.
so no, Dawn, the idea of the two of them gone, it really does lend itself to something. I remember seeing a video interview where she was talking about like when her brother passed, and how she felt, that pain that stays with her. And there was something in there that people are bringing up and up now, where she was talking about the idea of not wanting to be in a world where her brother doesn't exist. And I guess people are trying to find connections with that. But for whatever it is, and whatever has happened, rest in peace, Hayden. And it really does, like, that's the one thing that comes back to me over and over again, the idea of we did not save the cheerleader. Save the cheerleader, save the world. So there's that. I see all sorts of other different tributes coming up from people who know, different people talking about, like, when Melissa did not come back for Scream, how she stood up, and joined with Melissa in terms of her protest and talked about it. But that's on a side. Just rest in peace, Hayden. I hope that she is able to find true rest now. That's me.
All right, so switching gears here now. Let us talk about the third season of House of the Dragon, right? And it's a good thing. Well, before. Well, do you want to do you want to do a premise for this or no?
Yeah, sure, if you want.
All right, all right. Well, all right. Well, I'll leave it up to you to do the premise, then, right? So I'll just do a quick preamble, right? So for me, I had to do a recap of the last season, right? And it's actually a good thing that I did, right? Because the last season came out like 2024, I believe it was, right? So I had to refresh my memory, right? And I will say this, right? Even though it is arguably the weakest season that we've had so far, I think
I
that
agree.
yeah, I do think that narratively it is a necessary season, right? I think that
Right.
like what I said last time is that it was setting up the war that will take place, right? And ironically though, it just had us waiting for the war to come. We was just like, okay, the war coming, okay, in the finale it's gonna come, right? And it does not come. It was about to start in the finale, and then it sort of stops at a certain point, right? But I will say, in recapping the second season, which which I enjoyed back then, right? And I put it as one of my favorite seasons, TV show seasons of that year, right? I think that I think that season two actually like with a second viewing, yeah, I think is much better than a lot of people saw it as when it first came out, right? But I can understand why people back there was like, oh, that was such a letdown, blah blah blah, right? But in terms of setting up things, setting up the conceit, and just pretty much just putting all the chess pieces in position, right? I think it absolutely works, right? How they explore the relationship between Rhaenyra and Alicent totally worked for me. That final confrontation that they had in the finale absolutely works for me. And I'll close this. Even though yes, we were let down by the fact that there was no war in the second season in that finale. That second season still ended on a strong note in my opinion, right? Because yeah, it really was just that divide between those two friends, and it's just all a matter of like just politics and power and who have control of how many dragons and whose relative is that and whose bastard is that, right? That's what that second season was about. It was just pretty much kind of like just zeroing in on just a majority of characters and just showing, hey, this is where they fit. This is what they believe in. And so when this third season that we'll get to kicks off now, it's like, all right, now that we know where characters stand now in the last season, now it's just a matter to see which side they're gonna pick and what it is they're gonna do, right? So that to me is why, yeah, that second season was strong, right? But again, it was just we were expecting a lot and we didn't get that, but just from a character perspective and just from a world building perspective, it was brilliant, in my opinion, right? But that's just all for my second viewing, right? And I love the fact that this kind of sell myself out here quickly, that the third season kind of makes up for the mistakes that the second season did, right? But at the same time, still giving us the goods and much, much more, right? But yeah, Ricardo, before you jump into this third season, you just want to share with the audience how you felt or still feel about season two?
Yeah, I mean, not as great as season one. I think season one really felt like Game of Thrones was back, and at least to get a workable hype for it. But season two, not so much. Season two was just like whatever. But it's like I was doing its thing. There's still making it work for all intents and purposes. They're making it kind of work. And but I was nowhere near as hyped to it. And then with season 3, even less hyped. But like I'll admit, because I'm not a super Game of Thrones fan, I don't know what to look for or like. And especially with look, what's the other show that came out the other day? The other Game of Thrones show. That's a kind of a spin-off and making fun of Game of Thrones. But
that would be a Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Did you see it?
Right.
Because I saw it and
Yeah,
I loved
watch
it.
that. Yeah, that was okay.
All right.
I had enough fun with that, all things considered. But like this one, but this was I had even less hype going forward with it. But it's like, all right, cool. I still did fit. But yeah, you could do that.
Yeah. All right. Well, you still want to do this synopsis or no?
Yeah, sure. Right. So yeah, basically it's just they kind of crashing out, right? Aegon especially.
Yeah, boy. Aegon, boy. Oh, boy. You talk about him.
Keep holding on, but because I think I forget the prophecy kind of like playing on in mind and playing that conceit going forward.
Yeah,
so
the whole Song of Ice and Fire thing, which
right.
Well, which Rhaenyra's father Viserys, who died in the last season, in season 1, had told her, and it just planted the seed in her head that she is supposed to control the Iron Throne, right? She's supposed to be ruling the whole Seven Kingdoms thing, right? But then circumstances took place over the past couple of seasons, right? But yeah, you could go on.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Pretty much, it sets up the first episode really well, where Rhaenyra and Aegon fighting down if this thing would be causing throne, if it matter. And then it's just dragons.
Yeah, dragons.
Type for that, right? They just set up this conceit really well and build it from the second film. I think it was second season, and make it all things considered. So this only really pick up with me with episode 4.
Okay.
I think that is it. When I pick up, I find it start okay, but I thought it pick up better, and then it's time for it to build going forward, as it is. I think this is the weakest season in my humble opinion.
Okay. Well, like once again, we're gonna have a debate when it comes to House of Dragon, right? So alright, so let me breathe, gotta get a little long-winded here, right? So I will try to stay as spoiler free as possible, right? But yeah, as I said earlier, I think that this season improves on the feelings of the last season, right? In particular, giving the audience what it is they want and what they rightfully deserve, while at the same time sticking with the story, right? So yeah, we all sort of left season 2, and then when we heard about season 3 dropping this year, it's like, all right, well, war is coming, right? War is coming. We saw that teaser, it's like, all right, war is coming, right? And what I love about, all right, so the biggest spoiler I'll give here, right? I have to give this, right? So this is kind of me adding to your synopsis on this, right? There is a war that takes place, right? Yes, and it is between Rhaenyra and pretty much those who still follow Aegon, right? And his team, right, is still aligned with the High Towers and all that kind of stuff, right? And remember, Alicent is a High Tower as well, right? So it's like that, right? But the war starts off, right, and you get the goods, right, in the first couple episodes. Again, this is the biggest spoiler I'll give, right? But I'll explain why I have to give it like this, right? And then things play out a certain way, and Rhaenyra claims the throne.
Right.
I have to give this out. Because people might go in thinking that this season is going to be all out war, man. But no, that's not what the season is about. There's war, yes. It involves dragons, yes. But it's still about this battle for the Iron Throne, right? So the majority of the story, I should say, going forward, is about Rhaenyra ruling King's Landing now and trying to adjust to being pretty much a queen now, right? Like officially a queen, right? And dealing with internal and external matters, and you just see how it affects her mentally, especially mentally, boy, and emotionally. The people that she aligned with, you see how their relationships strain throughout this entire season, and then it eventually leads to another big battle, and that's where it stops off at, right? So I had to give that spoiler because, again, a lot of people might think that this season is going to be all about the war, right? Because of how slow, the last season was. But no, that's the way it is, right? So it gives you the goods. It gives you exactly what it is you want. And it plays out the way exactly, or it plays out the way it should play out, right? Even though there's a major casualty, I did not spoil what happened there, but yeah, there's a major casualty, right? And yeah, but pretty much it is about Rhaenyra, right? And this is her season, true and true, right? And when you really think about it, it's kind of like her show when you think about it, right? Because at first, like, I think this is where I was a little iffy about the second season too, right? Is because I thought it was going to be Alicent and Rhaenyra. I thought it was just going to be about the two of them, right? But you saw a little less of Alicent in the last season, and you see even less of her in this new season here, right? But it actually makes sense when you think about it, right? Although I can understand some fans saying, no, we want more Alicent, man, blah, 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 right? But anyhow, but yeah. So let's jump into the acting one time, boy. Emma Darcy as Rhaenyra, boy. She shut shit down in the season. She was excellent. This is like Emmy, and I don't follow the Emmys, by the way, right? I just hear
Right.
about, oh, this show win an Emmy, this person win an Emmy, okay, cool, right? But this is Emmy worthy acting
Right.
that I've seen from her, boy. Like, just the emotional ranges that she had to tap into, boy, it absolutely works, right? The character that she plays, boy, just the complexity of that character, boy, just shines from episode 1 to episode 8, boy. She was great in this, right? It's a shame, though, that Olivia Cook, who plays Alicent, is kind of sidelined, but again, so I understand, right? So, minor spoiler, she is kept prisoner. She and her daughter, right, is kept prisoner, right? And it's just only to kind of keep them in check because, she doesn't want her to run off to find her son Aegon or Aemond, right, who actually has his little side quest as well too, right? And it's
Right.
funny that it mirrors exactly what happened to Daemon in the last season where he ends up in Castle Harrenhal and encounters a witch and all kind of weird stuff take place, right? In the finale in particular, they actually, the witch herself gives a very, very, very tragic backstory in terms of who she is and why she is the way she is, right? And it adds so much detail in terms of, what to expect going forward. And of course, just the lore of Game of Thrones, right? But yeah, even though Alicent is sidelined, she still works in the season here, right? She's more like the reactionary kind of character, right? Because in the last season, she just didn't want anything to do with the war. She was just being emotionally affected by it, right? In particular, the way how her sons were fighting against each other and all that kind of stuff, right? I mean, Aemon literally aimed his dragon at Aegon and nearly burned him on to death, right? And it's only because Aegon survived, right? He now like, all right, cool. I had to go and bust my brother throat now, right? So it's like that, right? But yeah, even though Alicent is kind of to the side, though, she still brings a level of emotion to the story as well, right? And you even see it in the daughter, right? I forgot the character's name right now, right? But yeah, what they both go through emotionally, boy, is kind of heartbreaking in my opinion, right? But in this season,
This is well done. Yeah.
yeah, but in this season, Alicent actually takes action. I'm not gonna say what does she do, but again, it sort of mirrors with what happened in last season, where in the finale, she literally tell Rhaenyra, "I will do everything I can to stop this." Right? I will literally open King's Landing, the gates of King's Landing, for you to literally walk in and claim this throne. Even if it means, slight spoiler, killing my sons, I will do that. Just as long as the war is over. That's really what her modus operandi is about, right? But I will say that finale, right? And I know many people, myself, well, even when I saw it too, I was like, where Alicent and all of this, right? I did not spoil what happened with her, but she comes in at just the right time. And because of how this particular season ends, which I absolutely fuck with, I was like, yeah, that friendship done now. That friendship is ended now. That's it for them now. I don't know what will happen going forward, but that is the end of that relationship, right? Because in this season, they was trying to kind of keep the relationship intact, the friendship intact. Sorry, even though she is, she is prisoner to Rhaenyra, right? But it's like, nah, boy. After how this season ends, like that's it, boy. That does it, right? But yeah, again, Emma Darcy is great. Just performance wise, everybody just killed it, right? What they do with Damon's character works as well because he wants to he want to stay by Rhaenyra's side, right? But at the end of the day, it's really all about him wanting to have power, right? Even if it means just being side by side with the person who's sitting on the Iron Throne, right? But you could tell like he wants to sit in it as well, but it's all that kind of stuff, right? And it's just where they take the characters as well too, right? Aegon is a scene stealer, right? And because at first you tell yourself, because he actually was him and oh gosh, this crippled guy who was helping him out in King's Landing. They fled King's Landing in the final episode, right? And they go off on the adventure as well too, and they not spoil what happened to them at that point, right? But just where they take all the characters, I think, works for the most part, right? But Aegon, though, he had some great highlights as well, too. There's one involving the return of a character that was long thought dead. That was an absolute highlight for me. I love that.
Right.
What they do with Aemon, was like it was a little slow burny, what I mean? Like it wasn't sure exactly where it was going, but the payoff for that though I thought was absolutely worth it, and it just leaves it just leaves room open for what's gonna happen in the next season, right? But that's wrapping up the review here. Just a couple quick thematic points I want to mention, right? What I love what the season did here, right, is that it just expanded on what the last season was doing, where it was just really all about where these characters fit in this world, right? Whether you are highborn or whether you are a commoner or whether you are a bastard, right? In particular when it came to, Lord Corlys, right? What are the few black people in the show, right? And his relationship with his two sons, who are unfortunately bastards, right? One of them becoming a dragon rider, right? And it's just that stuff involving family and legacy, right? I think that to me is the heart of House of Dragon. That what sets it apart from Game of Thrones, right? Because Game of Thrones is all about, hey, my ancestors did this, so that means I should do this too, right? And everybody's sort of fighting because of what was, because of the groundwork that was laid, centuries before they even were born, right? That's what it is. But this one was, this show is the groundwork being laid right in front of our eyes now. And it's all, and it is about legacy. It is about prophecies that may or may not be true, right? It may be the ranting of a dying old man, right? For all we know, or it could be the vision of what's to come, right? As the show alludes to a lot, right? But yeah, it's just how the show touches on that, especially in that second season, and how they expand on that in this third season absolutely works as well, right? But you do get the action, and the action absolutely works. The first two episodes, well, I should say, the main battles that they get in this season were great, especially the one that kicks off and closes off this season. Yeah, were excellent in my opinion, right? The action scenes, well done. The dragons look great. The VFX work in this show, boy, my God, boy. Like, HBO just know how to spend their money, boy. Like, that's them dragons, boy. Holy shit, right?
Yeah.
And I just love the idea that, once we have dragons, we have power, right? And last point I'll make before I wrap up here, right, is what the main thing that I love about this show here, and it borrows from Game of Thrones, right? It's the same sort of quality, right? But I really notice it here in this show, right? It's how it takes characters that you would like in one season or hate in one season and find ways for you to relate to them, to side with them, to even like them or support them. But they have to go a long way to make up for the shit that they did in the past. And you see like a lot of characters like that, right? Like I would say there's no real hero in this show. There's no real villain in the show. There's more like protagonists and antagonists, really, right? No heroes or villains in this show, right? And you really see it with Rhaenyra, right? Even though it's, at first it's like, because she's a woman, she shouldn't, society doesn't want her to become queen and blah, blah, blah. Well, wanted to rule, the Seven Kingdoms, right? But you can't blame her for believing that, because that's what she father tells she years before, right? and the shit that went down with her being sent off, having to wed somebody else and all that kind of stuff, right? So you see like all the circumstances that led to her becoming who she is in this season here, right? But at the same time, there's all these doubts and all these other things, all these things that she herself does. And you can't come now and say, well, it's because of the prophecy and because of this is why she turned she back on people, why she cutting off people, all that kind of stuff. It's ego, it's a lot of stuff like that. And that's why I couldn't help but be reminded of the series finale of Game of Thrones, right? I mean, love or hate that finale, but I just love the fact that the Iron Throne was eventually just turned to ash because of the dragon. Because like at the end of the day, the Iron Throne is pointless. Like all this bloodshed literally for nothing. That's what I love. Yeah.
I think the dragons recognize, well, that was the ending with dragons and Daenerys recognize that itself. So they say, okay, this is sorcery problem.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's what they try to go for.
Yeah, like the Iron Throne is a problem, but they don't know that as yet, right? So you just seeing all this war and all this battle is literally for nothing, right, But you can understand why Rhaenyra feels the way she feels, right? Even though she makes some real shitty calls, I would say that finale, boy. I was like, nah, boy, I was siding with you, I was siding with you. Why you doing shit like this, shit? I understand where you're coming from, but nah, boy. She takes serious L's in that finale, right? But anyhow. But yeah, I loved this season, boy. And I guess for me, it's because I recapped the last season and it was just able to just take the little mistakes that the last season did when it came to like pacing and storytelling and just make it work, right? They give it the action, they give it the thrills, they give it the story, they give it the bacchanal, as we use, the term that we use in Trinidad. They give it everything, right? But it still feels like the comments, yeah, you get all that, right? You get all that, right? But is the characterization to me is the biggest strength of this show here, and just giving us just a strong protagonist or antagonist, however you want to see it, in the form of Rhaenyra. Boy, this is Rhaenyra's show. This is Rhaenyra's season, right? But given where the season ends, it's like, yeah, boy, you and Allison, boy, that's it for you, though. I am excited to see where they go next from here, right? So yeah, for me, rating wise, light 4.5 out of 5. Boy, this is one of the best TV show seasons I have seen all year. And this is not me saying that the show so far isn't flawed, right? I mean, it's not a perfect show, mind you, right? And I am not a Game of Thrones fan, and I still haven't read the books, right? So I cannot say, this change that, the showrunner is doing from the George R. R. Martin material makes sense, or it clashes with his hero, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going into that. I am just watching this story here play out and just treated it as this is the precursor to what will happen in Game of Thrones. I think that what I'm seeing so far is consistent. And I'm not seeing anything that undermines what we've seen before in Game of Thrones. I'm not seeing that thus far, right? It's telling its own story, but it's keeping to that same Game of Thrones formula, even right down to using the theme song, which still slaps to this day. And yeah, they're just making them work for the most part, right? But yeah, this was a huge step up from the last season. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I am excited as all hell for season 4. Yeah, bring it on. So yeah, Ricardo, floor is yours. You can tell me how wrong I am, and then you could close things off with your final rating.
Not too much. Listen, I get what you're saying, but to me, I find the show feeling like it's spinning its wheels. That's my problem with it. Like, I see people reacting to saying, well, I don't really care about the writing, and it's like, that is the show, though. That is the show.
Yeah.
But and they just having fun with it, and to me, it's like, no, they not feeling like it progressing in some workably meaningful way. Like, again, I didn't really care for season 2, but at least season 2 felt like it was going somewhere. Right? It's like this character is saying the same thing, complaining about the same thing in the same settings, and that's what it felt like this season felt like to me. I didn't like completely hate it or I didn't completely hate it. Like, I can't say this is real trash or not like that, but it's more like, yeah, this good of progress in a meaningful way, and I didn't get that at all in this season. Like, it's good, and I get it, and have some good cameos, and whatever it is, but it didn't feel like it didn't go anywhere as much as it could have been. And it's not like a pace in issue so much as it is just a beat issue. They need new beats, and I just didn't get that from this season. That's how I felt about it.
All right, well, just before you get to that, right? I think I understand why you feel this way. You can tell me how wrong I am here. I think it's because, admittedly, it retreads certain things from Game of Thrones, right? It retreads the whole Targaryen must rule, must have the Iron Throne, and whoever gets in his or her way will get killed or burnt alive by a dragon, right? So I could understand Rhaenyra kind of going through the same thing, like what Daenerys went through, right? I get it, right? But again, it's the same sort of prophecy thing, and
But again,
Targaryen's supposed to run it
they're
thing.
trying to replicate the beats. I get it.
Right.
They're trying to replicate the beats. It's there's a lot of that, but like because I don't know because they feel I get the feeling they feel beholden to the material in that sense. And like that's why Martin is right. To be fair, they're like it's shifting away from Martin's style or any of that nonsense. It's like no, they're doing what he would have done. Well, at least the workable translation as it is. So that's how I felt about it. But like I don't know. Like we should still get more going forward or whatever it is.
And one more point I'll make before you wrap things up, right? And I think even though I loved A Night in the Seven Kingdoms simply because it just subverted the material in like really creative ways. I think maybe dropping it in the same year was kind of not a poor move, right? But maybe if we had gotten that show last year before getting this, instead of getting both in the same year, I think maybe people would have gravitated to the season more, I guess, because at least that show was brave enough to try something different, while this one have to stick to the Game of Thrones formula, if that makes sense. Maybe,
Yeah, that's the thing. It kind of going back to the conceit, so and Game of Thrones itself has always been like a subversion in its own conceit towards the sword and sorcery stuff, right? So I don't really I'm not trying to pull it back in some kind of hard space. But I don't know. This one just didn't. This season, I think, just needed to just pace itself a little better and make it work for itself. I get it, and I know I'm trying to avoid the whole complaint, doom spiraling kind of attitude towards this, but I couldn't help but think like, wait, boy, this is not going anywhere. And it's like I wonder if it's me. As usually as like if I really not enjoying something, I wonder. I was always thinking if it's me or I can pay attention or anything like that. But like no, I compare it to other shows I watch and like just the comparing like well I watched this and finish off what do you call it Batman and Superman and it's like no those shows actually going somewhere in peace in itself. All things considered, not perfect, but this that was the main problem I had with this season. So that's it.
All right, I understand. I guess maybe. Before I give a rating, I guess maybe, in the process of trying to fix the mistakes of season 2, we end up getting a season that ultimately season 2 should have been, right? I would argue I would argue that 2 and 3 kind of have to work as separate seasons, but I get where you're coming from. Like this could have been season 2 when you think about it, but they are telling their story.
Right.
I don't know the law or whatever it is. So I am just watching this thing, I am just consuming it and saying, okay, well, things have to play out this way. Okay, I get it. I think that's why I enjoyed it so much, because I just treated it as, oh, this is how the story has to progress, because I'm not familiar with the source material at all, right? That's all I'm gonna say. But yeah, final thoughts and rating.
Yeah, rating. 6 out of 10. I didn't hate it or anything like that, but I was just underwhelmed, all things considered. And I as I say, if I don't know if listen, this might be a dumb idea. It's one of those like, well, they should have do this, but it really felt like they could have combined 2 and 3 into something, shorten 3, and combine that and have it piece out a little bit. I don't know.
But basically, the problem with that, Ricardo, is that they tried that with the last couple seasons of Game of Thrones, right? And you see how that played out, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So is that. For those who enjoying this, is fine, but I don't know, I just couldn't, it just felt the pacing was way too slow. Now, in the case of they didn't have an ending. That's the difference. Is that because he didn't write the ending, so they had to make up some bullshit. So that was it. But like, he already done these books kind of done in a sense already. Is it not like they come?
Are they done? Because listen, I know George is a man who say he going to write and then he just and then he's just do other shit. I don't know. Are they done?
I think this material is more or less done.
Okay.
As far as I know. But the actual like end time story, that's not done. Like I call it Windsor, whatever it is.
Right.
I don't know if that'll ever finish. I feel you gone there, to be honest.
So sorry for laughing at that. It's just the irony of it all. That's what we laugh at that. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. However, they have a point. Like, I don't know. I just couldn't get into the season as much. But that's just me. I'm probably in the minority for this one, but I don't know. It just piece and they could have just something. They could have just dovetailed this to something different or something like that. I'm not sure. But that's about it. 6 out of 10.
All right, I understand, right? I mean, at the end of the day, to each his own. I am just speaking as somebody who is not versed in all things Game of Thrones. And someone who still wants to own the box set of the full series, even though, yeah, them last couple seasons, right? But I just want to own it because I still think that the show is like probably one of the best TV shows to ever exist,
Forget for all the problems you have with it, iconically, it's straight iconic.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the quality is still, and just the mere fact that the quality is here in this show here, right? And it was just able to enough for us to apologize, to accept the apology of the last couple seasons of Game of Thrones. Like, yeah, cool, no problem, right? But yeah, regardless of where House of the Dragon goes from here, I just hope that it sticks the landing and it does not overstay its welcome, right? But yeah, for me, season 3 is absolutely worth it. Definitely check it out. If you don't care for the show, this season won't win you at all. If you were let down by season 2, this should entertain you, to the point of just let it slide. But if you're just sort of tuned out of it because it just feels a little too much like Game of Thrones, then yeah, it's best that you just move on and, probably just... I will still recommend that you watch A Night of the Seven Kingdoms because at least it's subvert the material in a great way, in my opinion.
I know people are talking on that because it was feeling a little too try hard to be subversive, but no, I don't know.
Yeah. I think that show totally works, right? Crass, gross out humor and all. I think it works, man, right? But yeah, that's all we have to say about House of Dragon. So yeah, again, season 4, which I suspect that we will get in 2028. I am there. I hope to be around when it drops. So yeah, season 4, bring it on. Alright, so now that House of Dragon is out of the way now for what? Like a year or two, as we said before. Yeah, now in its place is Lanterns, right? So for many people, they're gonna be tuning in every Sunday up until October the 4th to watch it. I will wait until the full season wraps up and then I'll just binge everything, right? But I should say we had to watch this series premiere. We had to watch the series premiere, right? And yeah, we did, right? So we're not gonna get too spoilery here. Might just mention a couple of spoilers here or there, right? But yeah, I will do the premise quickly, right? Just having seen this episode like about literally half hour before we met up here online, right? So yeah, so basically we just follow, Hal Jordan, or I should say the definitive, arguably the definitive Green Lantern, played by Kyle Chandler, right? And in this setting, in this portrayal of, the Green Lantern lore, he is already established, right? So, we get the whole backstory and it pretty much plays out straightforward, right? But he is a seasoned, Green Lantern, right? And, he is, he's still doing his thing, right? Even though he's older now, right? And he knows a lot about, how to navigate himself with the powers and all that kind of stuff, right? So he has a trainee now, which is Jon Stewart Jr., right? Who is played by my boy Aaron Pay, right? And mad points for him just getting that opportunity because I think like right after Rebel Ridge came out in 2024. Swear to God, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like about a week or two after the movie came out, I think like right after we reviewed it, Ricardo. That's where we start getting the announcements. Oh, Aaron going to be cast in, this Lanterns live action thing. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Do your thing, bro.
There was an overlap between like fan castings of watching him and being like, he could be this so and so. And then the official news comes out and it was like, yeah.
Yes, I think that's what happened.
This was like one of those immediate fan castings that just jumped to reality, like as fast as I think it does a little bit.
Yeah, and I think it may have to do with his eyes now, with his green eyes, yeah, right? I think it's so, right? It's just something about the eyes. It's like, oh, if you just cast him as an alien, like he have, if you just make his eyes glow, whatever it is, he could sell it, right? And then he just have that sort of stoic look about him, right? But anyway, so, Jon Stewart Jr., or you'll call him John for now, right? Yeah, so he's a Green Lantern trainee, right? So
with Father of the Year, right?
Yeah, exactly, right? So what the show does well, right? Just giving out, let's finish up the premise here, right? So what this show does here is that it gives us 3 specific timelines, right? Or time periods, right? It gives us 96, 2016, and 2026, right? So in 96 would be when, John was younger and he now seen Hal, being the celebrity, right? He is the Green Lantern now and all that kind of stuff, right? And,
There's a motive for decades and six, because he's 10 years ago.
yes.
Something happened in 2006. Then 2016 and then 2026. So I don't know. That will come together. I don't know why they do that, but whatever.
Yeah.
This is the truth.
But
There's a random thing there with that as well. In terms of like when Superman, it talks about like when James came out with Superman, it was like 300 years, 30 years, and 3 years ago. That I'm checking to see as well if they really are playing the greater lore here.
I was wondering that too. I was wondering if there was some sort of certain fandom or some sort of like I don't know, like some sort of comic book lore thing that was going on around those time periods, right? So we get 1996. We don't get 2006 though, which is interesting, right? But whatever. But the idea is that John was a kid, so you need to see him grow up and whatnot, right? And we see that he also comes from a military background because his father actually was in the army as well too, right? There's a moment involving the two of them, which at first I was like, wow, boy, like father of the year indeed, but like oof. But after that, like, all right. A little kind of a tough love kind of thing here. Okay. Right. But I kind of get. I feel like this will be a theme going forward, which would be "Are you afraid?" Right? That's like I guess one of the taglines of the show here, right? And then, in 2016, this is like where the story really plays out, right? So you see, John and Hal kind of working together. In this case, they're investigating this mass shooting that took place after a football game, and they're trying to figure out what's going on there, right? But then it ends with 2026, and I dare not spoil what happens there, right? All I would just say is that John is older, and something rather unexpected happened, right? And this is where, just to jump into my thoughts on it, right? This is what caught me completely by surprise, right? Because I think for everybody going into this, they will think, oh, so it's 2016, we're just gonna stay. 2016, we're just gonna stay here. It's just gonna be about that, right? But in the back of my mind, I was like, all right, but they're not gonna skip over to this year though. And then when they do, it's like, oh, okay. Right. So I have a feeling that they're gonna center this season on those two time periods, 2016 and 2026, right? It's gonna be about one character investigating a case. Well, a case, but it's gonna tie up, is gonna connect some way or somehow, right? As alluded by the end of this episode here, right? And I will say, for a series premiere, this totally worked for me, right? I like the fact that because I follow the True Detective HBO page, right? Back in the days when shows would come out, on certain cable stations, they would have they'll have Facebook pages, right? I say this because ever so often they will update it, or they will just say, oh, we're gonna change this to that instead, right? So I was surprised that the True Detective page just put up this Green Lantern logo. I was like, oh, okay, I see what they did there, right? Because when you think about it, this has a sort of a True Detective kind of feel to it, right? With the whole dark side of Americana, that kind of stuff. Also, the older cop and the younger cop, that kind of thing, right? Even though they are not policemen, but it still have that older cop teaching younger cop kind of vibe to it, right? And the chemistry between Kyle and Aaron absolutely works here. You really feel it. You really feel that connection, that connection, right? That chemistry, sorry, right? And Kyle really plays this old, weathered down Hal Jordan brilliantly, in my opinion, right? He's very cynical, and it says, oh, like you're like back in the days, you used to respect me because I was a superhero, right? But now it's like, oh, you don't want me to work on all the case, right? Fine, whatever. I not I'm not part of the jurisdiction. Fine, whatever. I just gonna stay in the back because I know what's going on, right? And yes, in this particular case, with the case that takes place in 2016, yes, it has to do with aliens, right? I will say that even though this is not a action heavy episode, and I don't think that the show as a whole is going to be action heavy, right? Similar to like True Detective, for example, right? I have a feeling, because it's HBO, they sort of like saving things for like big moments,
Yeah, we'll get like a couple action, small little beats. Then you'll have one episode, I'll have like some real amazing sequence.
Yeah, I have a feeling they could do that.
And at the end, it's gonna be like solid. But that's about the action. I feel they're following the formula there.
Yeah, and it's very HBO. That's how they do things, right? I will say though, that interrogation scene between Hal and a particular person, was
Mhm.
near
Mhm.
perfect in
Up
my
there.
opinion. In terms of writing, in terms of pacing, boy. And it's just that back and forth between two of them because slight spoiler, it involves
No,
Hal
that's
try to try to figure out if this guy is indeed an alien or not,
listen.
right? It's how it builds and how it leads up to. It's
Yeah,
like, yeah, boy. Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
listen, him sussing his over the opinion of Barack Obama is hilarious to me.
Yes, yes. That was brilliant, boy. But that's how it builds and builds, and that
Mhm.
payoff, boy. I was like, woof. And then they just hit me with that ending, and I was like, oof. What going
Yeah,
on here, right? And I was honestly
right.
expecting this season on, but they didn't do that here, right? But yeah, this episode had me like really excited here, right? Of course, Aaron Pierre really shines here. He's still playing the stoic role, because
Yeah.
that
Right.
we did, in Rebel Ridge, and he does it here too, right? But you could tell like he really want to be a Green Lantern, but he just don't want to. He wanna earn it, right? But it's just like, nah, but how, like, why you being all like a e-hole about it, right? Like, like,
Right.
eventually I will have to take that ring from you, right? That's how it had to be. We could tell like Hal don't want to give it up, right? And that will lead to, I guess this is going to be the main theme of the show, right? Is John really worthy of the ring, or is Hal really like when it reaches that moment? Is Hal really going to give up that ring, or is he going to give it to somebody else, right? And
Yeah.
a couple more points I'll make, right? So I love the grounded realism of it all. It feels logical. It makes a lot of sense because yes, I like that they set it up that people already know who Green Lantern is, right? You know who Hal is, right? There's actually a really great and hilarious moment involving a counterfeit bill.
Right.
That was smart. That's all I'll say. That was real smart. I love that in terms of world building and just the idea of how Hal's powers work, right? And last but not least, while I was watching this, right, I couldn't help but tell myself, right, because yeah, when it comes to live action Green Lantern adaptations, yeah, we've never gotten a fair shake, right? I should say that character never got a fair shake, right? By just watching this, I like, dog, premise wise, this is perfect, right? This is exactly how you had to pull it off. To the point that I was watching, it's like if this had come out in the 90s, along with stuff like Lewis and Clark, I'd be like, yeah, this is perfect. This would have been perfect prime time viewing. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if it would have been on HBO back then, right? I don't know. Maybe it would have been on CBS or something like that, right? But just that whole body cop, older cop teaching younger cop the ropes kind of vibe, and it's
Yeah, but
within Green Lantern, I think
yeah,
absolutely works, man.
we think True Detective, but like there was before True Detective, we had another famous like cop dynamic that they could have done it, and we got that with First Flight, which is Training Day.
Yes, from
Yeah,
2001. Yeah.
exactly. We could have seen something like that in them times. Because I still think First Flight is one of the best templates to how to do a Green Lantern story.
Yeah.
And build from there. So yeah, there's that.
Yeah. And one last thing I must say though, right? This as this is a series premiere, we didn't really get like because it's HBO, right? And they've been doing that with like with Game of Thrones, with House of Dragon. But as we talk in DC Studios here with Penguin, right? Although that would show up like at the end of the episode, like when you see the names, right? I told you to get that here, but I have a sneaky suspicion that with the next episode to come, we will get that stylized opening or closing title sequence. I have a feeling they will do that, right? Because that's what HBO does do so well. And I mean, it's lanterns though. Like we had to do it, right? If they don't, well, okay, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, in gun we trust. But I have a feeling because it's HBO, they will do it one way or the other, and it will look awesome, right? But yeah, I should say color me, ha ha ha, right? Because green, right? Yeah, color me impressed by the series premiere. I am definitely excited to see where the season plays out. However, I do not see myself watching this on a weekly basis, although I know it would make for great Sunday night entertainment, right? So I have to do my damnedest.
I will be doing that.
So I have to do my damnedest to avoid spoilers like they play because I know something major will happen, and then IndieWire or IGN will blow it up and give the episode a rating. I'll be like, oh, now I have to watch it now. I have to stop what I'm doing to watch this particular episode and see what happens, right? But my game plan is to wait until this season wraps up at October the 4th and just binge through everything and just see the story play out from start to end, right? But yeah, totally impressed by the series premiere, right? But yeah, Ricardo, your thoughts on the series premiere of Lanterns?
Yeah, really solid, really strong premiere in my opinion. It really had a true detective vibe, right? I make the joke a couple times, but I'm sure they might reference it. So somebody gonna reference it. You're gonna have a Yellow King joke in there somewhere, right? Referencing the Yellow King, right? I didn't know Jason Ritter was gonna be in this. I didn't know he was in this. He had a nice little spot, and what they do with him is great. The core of it really works, right? You see the chemistry between Pierre and Chandler. Yeah, they're just excellent, right? Just the dynamic is a bit cliched, but it's just so well executed. Them bouncing off each other. That as I say, we mentioned a bit with the execution, Harry Potter reference because WB, right? Um, and yeah, the shock at the end, that's a solid little shock at the end, and they make it work. I thoroughly love this. I thought it's just great. It never felt like it was too slow or boring at any point. Just solid pilot, and again, nice little pun, quality pilot because Hal Jones a pilot, right? So is that. Yeah, really strong from here. I dug the hell out of this one.
All right, and have to close this off with the biggest Green Lantern fan in this group here. Yeah, Tracy, your thoughts on the series premiere of Lanterns?
I don't know if to save this for at the end, but I will just put this out here. I have been waiting. And when I say waiting, I mean, Ricardo talks about like First Flight, and there's a few other Green Lantern animated projects that were working quite well, but I have been waiting for this. I mean, like there are memories of going to Movie Town in a fully green outfit, Green Lantern jersey, Green Lantern beanie, Green Lantern ring, black jeans, green Converse, to see a movie that had me griping for like 10 years. I kid you not, about 10 years.
Yeah, no, yeah, the Ryan Reynolds movie. Yeah,
Yeah. That had me thinking. But I will say, in terms of lanterns, I kind of scribbled on a few things here. One, I sat down there and I got the True Detective vibe, but I was also sitting down and I was thinking, there's something about this that feels very HBO Watchmen, and it's only realizing that Lindelof,
yeah,
Damon is one of the executive producers. I know Tom King is
right,
also an executive producer, so that's brilliant. But Damon is involved. I actually went to see if the same cinematographer was on board with it. He was. They weren't, but it was like this is giving me a kind of a deliciousness the way how Watchmen was, that HBO Watchmen was, and I was like, okay, good. So I'm on board with that. There's a line here that I won't. Slight spoiler. There's a line here that says, we're all aliens. It just depends on which planet you're standing on." And I just thought that was brilliantly written. I will throw two random thoughts out here. One, there's a reason why the show is called Lanterns. It's set up
right,
as a Green Lantern story. But like in the trailer, in one of the trailers, I think it was the final trailer or something like that, there's a bit there with Sinestro, and to give a little backstory as to like why Sinestro is going to be there. And I would not be surprised if like the Black Lantern Corps,
right,
a Necron,
right,
and Atrocitus and all of them find themselves somewhere inside there. And if we're talking about lanterns, not just the idea of two human Green Lanterns, but I really feel there's going to be more Lantern Corps people showing up at the end of it. But even if they don't, I'm just great. Uh, my one thing coming into this story, and I've yet to see if it really changes. I'm kind of wondering if this is post Parallax Hal Jordan, because there was a season in his life where fear did take over him, and he did become like the entity Parallax, and he was like really really horrible. And yes, I know like in this, there are a few people are still like, can I take a picture? And was all happy and everything like that. So maybe they may not necessarily have seen him at his parallax worst on Earth. But it really had me wondering, like, oh my God, I wonder if this version of Hal is like post parallax, or where we're going with that. Shout out as a random, this is completely random and has anything for nothing, but shout out John Diggle,
right.
because I remember when Arrow was ending and they gave John that green light and that green ring, and even when they did the crossover and one of the flashes came by, I was like, John, you're not wearing a ring. I guess things are different in this world. And there was a promise that was supposed to be that eventually Diggle was going to be this CWI's version of Green Lantern, something that we could latch onto until whatever, and that never happened. But Lanterns as a television series on HBO is so brilliant, and the groundedness, I think, is what gives it a little bit more of an edge. And I will throw this out. I mean, this is just me being me, but I'll say this. I I I see certain things coming out of some of the trades, like some of the trades talk about like it's a good show, but it's bogged down by comic book mythology. And I'm like, you know what? Give me the job to write these reports because it's a comic book show. For all the true detectiveness and for all the grounded reality, it's a story about space cops using their will and their mind to change things and to make constructs and protect themselves with bubble wraps. It's a comic book story. How you play into the comic book realm matters. We need to see green. There's a reason for that. We need to know what is going on with the Guardians. We need to know why these aliens are here and etc etc etc. That is part of the rationale and the reason why you bring up a Green Lantern story. But that aside, yeah, man, this was good. This is everything that I wanted in a live action Green Lantern, and I genuinely can't wait to see how it plays out, especially given where it ends. I mean, Damon Lindelof said in an interview recently, I think maybe last night itself, he says there's certain decisions that they're making during the season that fans might be upset with him about. And I'm like, I'm not one of those fans. I've seen Damon's work, not just in terms of like Lost, but also very much with Watchmen. Like he was one of the main voices of Watchmen. And so if you carry that energy into Lanterns, I'm here for it. So move on to next week Sunday. I am ready. I am ready for episode 2 to see where this goes.